My parents dislike my partner and my partner hates my parents. PLS help. I 20F university student am the typical eldest daughter of an African family. I take care of my siblings in the way they need, buy them the things they want, take care of the house a little. We've been in the West for decades and are have inside the flow with the system. My partner 22F university student, and I have been facing a challenging situation with my family. Here's a detailed account of what's been happening. A few months ago, my parents forced me to transfer from my university as I was going to third year because they don't like her and claim it's both of our faults for me transferring. As a result, I am repeating my second year at a new school, taking mostly first-year courses due to credit transfers and being part of their co-op program, which is insanely good for me. In July, we both planned on meeting up at the gym secretly. I would actually do the gym though, because it's nothing unusual to go to the gym. My parents were skeptical about this, but they didn't seem to mind too much, though I would get questioned at time about the gym. The last week of July was absolute hell. Jay and I decide to meet up on this day, and it was the same day I would be leaving on a trip with few family. Jay and I are sitting in the car as usual in the parking lot at the gym. I then noticed a car drive by which looked exactly like a car at home. I was nervous but tried not to be paranoid. A few moments later, I noticed the car was driving in our direction, and I yelled at Jay to get out of the car and run in another direction, just to still behave normally, and my dad followed her in the car as she walked inside an Ally in Walmart. I saw him leave the car, and chase after her in a quick jog. I was texting Jay frantically on Discord to run ND go quick and to be careful. I got out the back seat in the car I was currently in, ran to the front seat, turned on the AC and tried to look as natural as possible. I heard a honk and my dad was parked right beside me, as I saw Jay in the passenger seat just looking defeated. I rolled my window down trying to just contain how in shock I was, and just asked what was going on. My dad got out of the car and started disrespecting Jay by addressing her incorrectly on purpose by calling her a he. It was just so bad and gross and I was petrified, and so was my GF. We tried to have a civil discussion with him without trying to blow anything out of proportion, but then my dad started insisting that we were doing this thing of trying to make him look like the bad guy by making a commotion and making it seem as if he's in the wrong. He was saying we were trying to escalate the situation, while my dad continued to disrespect my GF, acting as if he didn't know what he was doing. Jay eventually spoke aloud about how she's sick of this, asking me to leave with her and to go in another direction where we could talk and remove ourselves from this issue. I was trying to calm her down because I know my parents, they will only make things worse if I don't listen to what they say once or if they don't like what I'm doing. Rather than listening to what I have to say, they listen to react, not to converse. So my GF was just super upset about all of this, obviously, and was insisting I leave with her. She said if I don't she'll break up with me. I just knew she was super upset and would say anything at this point, and my dad was just standing there telling me to go home and kept saying I was being threatened. I was trying to calm my GF down, telling her I would go home so that the situation doesn't overblow. And I also didn't want my mom to find out. BCS my dad was threatening he would tell my mom unless I went home. So as I was trying to close the car door, Jay stood in the way and insisted I come with her, and she's just done a TP with my dad and the constant disrespect from his end. My dad was talking back to Jay saying she shouldn't be disrespecting him in front of his daughter, and that Jay was being disrespectful speaking to him carelessly. I recall a few months back I was telling Jay an argument my dad was having with me about the both of us, and I had mentioned mistakenly that my dad addressed her incorrectly. Which is what the heavy upsetness is about as of recent, because people like my dad choose to disrespect others on purpose. Time skip. Eventually I was driving home with one of the cars, and my dad and Jay got into the other car to have a conversation, and Jay told me my dad was asking very generic questions about her major, but also asked very disgusting and weird questions like what was between her legs, etc. Africans will ask very intrusive and insane questions to people, but it should not be tolerated and encouraged regardless of who it is. My dad is not fresh off the boat and should know basic social customs and politeness. He has been in this country for more than a decade. I remember this not being the first time my dad those questions, because he had also asked me one ties and was insisting I answer because he insisted I knew the answer. I remember my GF had come over to my house to check up on me one night, because I had stopped answering my texts for a few hours. She knew beforehand that I was having another argument about us and was worried about why I had suddenly stopped answering my texts. My parents and eventually my parents got my siblings involved in the situation, about who I was dating, and what community I belonged to, etc., etc. And so when the doorbell rang, Everyone could see on the cameras someone was standing there and I knew immediately who it was. Both parents walked out and greeted Jay, and they had a quick short chat, and my dad got Jay's number and I knew it was just to keep tabs on whatever. After this incident, my mom would literally stand by my room door to eavesdrop on who I was on the phone with, and to get an earful. I didn't know this was happening the entire time, but over time she seemed to have collected some stuff. She once called me over to sit and chat, and the conversation was just so disgusting. She started going in on how I'm supposed to be with a man and have real sex with a man, and not to be using toys, touching chests less, and about not to use toys overall with others. I said this was a very gross and weird conversation, and she said this was very normal for parents to talk about. Then asked me if Jay and I ever did stuff together and would say we're sleeping together. I just denied everything because it was just so nasty. So while in the house since then, I was very wary of the times I called, and even changed my tone of talking so it wouldn't sound like I was talking to someone familiar. On that same day of my dad tracking Jay and I at the gym and finding us in the car, it was the same day I would be packing to go on a trip with some family. After the encounter I was super anxious about everything and felt so uncomfortable because I was petrified he would tell my mom and not keep his promise of not telling her. He would have recordings, videos, audios despite the fact he claimed to not have any. I have a difficult time trusting my dad because anything I tell him to not tell my mom, he would go and tell her and then I would be in trouble eventually. My dad has also cheated on my mom multiple times, and my siblings and I have seen him do it in plain sight on his phone, as he's scrolling through Tinder and other dating apps, even though he thinks he's doing a good job of hiding it. Apparently, my mom did it too according to my sis, but I have no idea. After that he told us he would be going to therapy counseling and he was sorry. He did it again recently in March as my bro was borrowing his iPad to do something, then came across his conversations on a dating app etc. Then also recently again in middle July when he left around 10 p.m. and came back the next morning 7 a.m. and I could hear arguing in the garage. I am not trying to date this to embarrass him, but to show it's unfair that I can't even date who I want without being judged. After the trip, the next morning, eventually I start getting confronted by my mom that I was still meeting up with Jay and I was wondering how she knew any of this, and she Calimed to have evidence, and she's very upset and disgusted because she mentioned reading out chat messages and how grossed out and disgusted she was, and was in shock about what she was seeing and was in disbelief. She was reading inappropriate stuff around my sis and bro which we all thought was so weird, but she said it's not because the movies and shows we watch have sex in them. I am just genuinely wondering how any of this was even retrieved. She even mentioned lightly that there were pictures and videos of the both of us. I was petrified. My mom and siblings forced me to sit down and write to Jay about how we should take a break, and I should send it through Discord since we always text on there. I sent the message and immediately my GF knew it wasn't me and was so grossed out and was furiously typing and responding back telling them they're being dictators, and just bad people etc. And was so unimpressed, my brother being himself, insists I should show the responses, and in doing that saw that over the course of a few hours and minutes, she had called me many times repeatedly, died to the fact we were on a call previously but then I just stopped answering. And my brother started calling this out and it was then used against me to show that she's too obsessed with me and won't leave me alone and always has to be next to me, and is too persistent. Etc. etc. Later on my mom and bro were suggesting I give away my phone for 3 days or SMTH. I refused and stood my ground and my mom was furious and started saying I should be delivered my God, and I need prayers etc. My dad heard everything that was going on but didn't say anything. It was a few moments later when no one was around, he asked me to come to the backyard to have a talk, and it was just a lot of talking and reminding me that I was the eldest daughter, which is a big deal in this culture, and I need to be a good example etc. etc. Mentioned some stuff about African traditions, and also how Indians have arranged marriages and they follow their tradition etc. etc. And used our neighbor as an example, of how the son got into an arranged marriage. Now they're married and the father is renovating the basement so his son and wife can also live with them. I just said okay. At some point I was so fed up, I packed my bags and some documents and I was so nervous while doing it. BCS, this is the first anything like THGIS has ever happened of SM1 in the family running away. That on that same day I left home all while things were basically heated up. I packed some bags and Ubered to my partner's house. I was so nervous and she was there for me the entire time and so sweet and had planned out everything for me and what I needed to could do to always have the support I needed. Eventually my aunts came since I shared the address with them, and I told them everything that has been happening for the past 3 years and why everything has been so rocky, and why I've been the way I've been, etc. And they were very understanding. My partner didn't want me to leave anywhere for a long time, but I promised her I would come back. I got my bags, and left with my aunts back to my house, so we could have a conversation with my dad and mom, etc. Addressing her incorrectly, etc., and it was just so obvious, and I was petrified, and I was trying to have a civil discussion so nothing would blow out of proportion, while my dad was repeatedly addressing her incorrectly and even on purpose. My GF turned around and said in a very unhappy tone and clear, saying, "I am sick of this, let's leave, let's go on a walk and discuss what's happening, RN." And I was just telling her to calm down, BCS. I know my parents, they will only make things worse if I don't listen to what they say once, or if I don't like what I am doing, they also just don't listen to the things I have to say, they just listen to react. And so my GF was very upset and was basically insisting I leave with her to go on a walk or SMTH, and my dad was just standing there telling me to go home, and he WWS also angry, ANF insisting I go home instead. I decided to just listen, but my GF stands inside the car to block me from closing it. BCS, she's just done ATP with the consistent disrespect from my dad. I discovered that my parents hired a private investigator to track my whereabouts, followed my partner to her house, and accessed our personal conversations and Uber Eats orders. We had no idea this was happening. One day, while we were at the gym, my dad tracked us down and confronted my partner in a Walmart lobby. He was extremely disrespectful, using incorrect names and addressing her rudely. This is when I found out my parents hired a private investigator to know my whereabouts, tracked my GF to her house she's renting, logged into my Discord and accessed a lot of our conversations, and the Uber Eats confirmation emails we were both ordering. We had no idea any of this was going on at all, and a few other serious emails. Like the marriage ceremony we had booked, BCSI insisted on helping her get PR, rather than the refugee way which Jay had mentioned to me Ans was planning. And so everyone, meaning my aunts, was just flabbergasted and told me not to do marriage that way and that it's not an efficient way and should cancel it. My aunts have clarified that they do not care who I date, like they told me. They just want to make sure I think things clearly and not do anything irrational. I told Jay about it, which Jay didn't mind at all and doesn't pressure me into doing things. She had another way of getting PR, so she helped me cancel it. My dad believes I am in this RS against my own will and believes it's something evil, and believes that Jay is threatening me, or bullying me or something, and my mom was just not impressed and was very mad, and my aunts mentioned I am bisexual, etc., and was just letting them know, and so on. My aunt and I talked privately and she suggested I take a 2-month break from the RS, just for me to find myself and be with my own thoughts without other PPL always telling me things. And after that, if I still want to be with Jay, then that's fine. And if not, then that's fine as well. BCS, it's my own decision. I liked this idea and told Jay about it, and she was a bit upset about it but understood, though she was very mad about me leaving her place that night when my aunts came, and I promised I would be back and going to my aunt's house, but I instead went back home to have a conversation. WPPL who don't choose to listen and are just so disrespectful to her. And so Jay wanted me to come over that morning to discuss, but I was so afraid to go. I didn't want to get yelled at again, and was just cowering. And it shattered her heart. Sue move BCS, she sees that as me not caring enough to come over so we could just talk it out. Time skip a many hours ahead when the argument was a bit afloat. Jay, she doesn't mind my aunts but hates my parents for everything that has happened these past few days. I feel like I am a coward and never ever stand my ground around my parents, and I also speak in circles when talking to them, which I need to work on, just being brave and say things as they are, clearly. Jay has always stood up for me no matter what. Always had my back and is always supporting me in whatever I may need. Jay is so caring towards me, is so intelligent, athletic, so funny and fun, and we just love each other so much, but my heart breaks so bad knowing once again I did not stand my ground. I am back home, and basically pushing her under the bus and never just doing the right thing. I am also always told by my parents 20 is still a child, which is fine, but they just kind of control stuff, and if I do SMTH they don't like. My mom old at times up my age, saying I am 21 or 22 years old and I should be an adult and should be behaving properly, etc. I guess POV matters. BCS phone my family's POV. They see me as someone who is suffering and always lies and never has a smile on my face. I explained that I may look like I am suffering. BCS, I kept feeling the need to hide stuff. Then they say I shouldn't be hiding stuff and should be clear, etc. They think I am in an abusive relationship but I don't know it. And that I am being manipulated and all. J just feels sorry for me and made sure I am okay, but I feel so bad for acting cowardly and afraid to make decisions that I want, but may get my parents mad. I still want to continue being in my relationship, but I am so afraid of just being a coward and afraid all the time on making true decisions I want without getting in trouble. A bit of my problems also resides in the fact that my parents are good to me and have been, but at times they say the most insane thing ever, making me to dislike them. And I am sure on whether to dislike them completely or not, because then they're nice again. My GF wants absolutely nothing to do with my parents, especially my dad, which is completely understandable at this point, and would like me to cut him off at some point. IDK.